Late better than never. We are finally live today. Had a bunch of issues that went on, but the show must go on. We're going to have the show anyway. But today I wanted to speak to everybody about private credit. Are we seeing a remnants of a 2008 underbirth of what we saw in 2008 during the financial crisis? Now, right now, today, we have a bunch of stuff going on with, we got the conflict in Iran. The president is going to be speaking here shortly, I guess in about an hour or so, about that. We're going to talk about that, the geopolitical landscape, private credit. What is that? What does that mean? But you already know, if you know, Uncle James is in the building. First interview of the year. He hasn't been on a couple months, but we talk all the time. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me go ahead and welcome Uncle James. How you doing today, sir?
How are you?
Great, 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 great to
Glad
see
to be
you.
here.
Oh yeah. So everybody that's out there, making sure you can hear us loud and clear. You're gonna have, if you got questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. And I don't know, maybe later on I may open up the phone lines if you want to call in and talk to Uncle James right here live. He's up there in New York, outside of New York, Jersey, things like that. Shout out to Alan Williams over there on Facebook. Appreciate you. But we want to talk about this, James. It's a lot going on in the world. Since the last time we spoke, we have a lot going on. What do you think?
Ooh. Well, I would say the theme right now is uncertainty. People are uncertain about a lot of stuff. They're uncertain about new technology. They're uncertain about the global geopolitical situation in the world. Um, and I think I don't necessarily think it's ominous. I just think that people just don't know where to look. They're not sure. Like there's people who are like even AI is scares people to death. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people are terrified. Now you have a war going on, or I call it a liberation of Iran. It's not a war, and that also creates a whole bunch of uncertainties.
Mm. Now, we're here today to talk about something a lot of people probably not familiar with. Some are familiar with private credit. So the first thing, what is private credit?
Ooh, private credit is really interesting because it became sort of a bigger thing after the 2008 financial crisis. And for your viewers who are just sort of new in the business or just trying to learn about stuff, think of
Mhm.
it this way. You might have a credit card, you might have a mortgage. That's like normal way you borrow money. You have a
Mhm.
contract, you have certain expectations that you have to meet. Um, with private credit, it's kind of more like when you were a kid and you said, "Hey, mom, I need $30 to buy a shirt." Your mom looked at you and said, "It's only 25." Right? And so you borrow money from your mom, not a credit card, not from someplace else. It's like a private transaction. So what happens has been happening is very large corporations have found that they could negotiate with potential people and create their own debt instrument, basically. Say I go to borrow from you, well, we sit down and we hash it out. And you say, well, look, if I'm going to do a personal loan, I got to charge a higher interest rate, but I'll give you some perks. If you pay it off early, I'll give you a big discount. If you double the payments, like pay two every month instead of one, I'll make some special deal. And so we work out the parameters, and I borrow money from you. It's basically like you take a loan from a family member or something like that.
Mhm.
But it's with large companies. It's used for a lot of real estate development. I'd say primarily what people are worried about is real estate development. A lot of startup funding comes from private credit, and so
Real estate refinancing.
yes, yeah, and I'm talking big stuff like multifamily, high density
Mhm.
multifamily houses, office buildings, large entities that may need a better way to access, less bureaucratic, less public, as a way to borrow money. And like anything else, there's a spread. You loan it, say we loan it to you at 10%, and you're going to pay back at 11%. There's like a spread between the
Mm-hmm.
two, and that's how the lender kind of makes money on the spread. And when it comes to these very large transactions, they get really creative. They engineer them specifically for the project, which there's nothing wrong with doing that. There's no, and a lot of these were packaged. It's kind of funny because I see in 2008 we had a collateralized debt obligation was the primary product that created all the problems. But before they called them CDOs, collateralized debt obligations, they used to call them asset-backed securities. And when I was doing some research to get on with you here, because I don't want to make this too complicated, it's actually a simple idea. It gets complicated because you're dealing with very large companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
and James, I want to mention this too because it becomes kind of complicated because the average everyday person don't really see themselves using it, but it's in their 401ks, their pension plans. Institutions do it all the time.
yes,
We love the returns on the market, but nobody talk about how the returns happening. So that's what makes it kind of like this new thing to the average, new person. So that's why people like private. I understand what credit is, but
yeah, I would say some of these institutions are even saying they're borrowing money at 4% and they're loaning it out at 10%. In other words, another big spread.
And the spread, okay.
There's a lot of. It's all about the spread. I always think like if you have this phone is for sale for $100, and if you're smart, you'll probably buy it for less, right? There'll be a difference. And maybe if I say, well, I have two phones, if you buy two phones, I'll sell them for $50 each. You'll buy them $50 each, and then you'll turn around and sell each one for $100 each. So, right. So, I think the problem with a lot of this stuff for regular people is they think about the big complexities. Boil it down. Think about the simple things, right? So what happens often if you borrow money from a friend or a family member? It goes sideways eventually. And what has started to happen is between COVID and work from home and AI threatening a lot of jobs, there's a lot of pressure on many of the people who borrowed money, use private credit to access capital. And the big problem with this whole thing, just like the CDOs, is there's no market mechanism to measure them. There's no secondary market where they're traded in. So if you, for example, if you see a bond that's put together of a whole bunch of loans, real estate loans, there's no way to look at the price. Whereas say you bought, say, Microsoft. For most people, if you buy a stock like Microsoft or Facebook or Apple, what do? You buy the stock, and every once in a while, you look at the stock price. If it's going up, you're happy. If it goes down every once in a while, you're like, okay. If it starts to go down a lot, then you go online and you go, what's wrong with Microsoft? What's wrong with, right? Most people, as long as it's like going up, say 3 out of 5 days, you're good. You're not really paying that much attention. You just see the price movement. It's a way to check. The market is checking. But with private like credit like this, there is no market mechanism like that. There's just like the CDOs. That was the whole problem. That's why it hit people really all of a sudden like a tidal wave, because nobody had any idea what was going on. And this is the same thing. Now, this is a $3 trillion market, probably bigger.
And you said something I want you to touch on. What are CDOs?
Oh, well, collateralized debt obligations
were
created, right, from mortgages. It basically started with a guy named Lou Ranieri from Salomon Brothers, and he decided he thought, wow, the mortgage market in the United States is this huge credit market. The pieces are too little for institutional investors, But if I can put a whole bunch of mortgages together in a synthetic bond, in other words, a fake bond, because it would be like thousands of mortgages,
Mm-hmm.
I could create a debt instrument that would have a very high credit standard because it's all mortgages. Um, and I could sell that to institutions that may want to get a little higher return, say, than buying government bonds, but
Mm-hmm.
don't really want to take too much more risk than that. So, like pension funds, insurance companies, um, banks, a lot of people like we're looking for this. The big issue is these things were because they weren't traded in a secondary market. People treat them in the old days. We used to call them coupon clippers. Little
Mm-hmm.
old ladies would buy a bond. Believe it or not, there actually was a paper document. On the bottom, there were coupons. And if it paid June 1st, you would cut that coupon off and go to your local bank and they would give you the interest. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people would keep these like in shoe boxes under their beds and stuff, or in a strong box somewhere, or a safe deposit box or something like
Okay.
that. And so it was coupon clipping. And that's really what went on with the CDOs. They were issued, they were like 10-year durations. People
And at
weren't
the time, it was considered real estate doesn't go down.
right. Real estate doesn't go down. Nobody defaults on mortgages. We all know that, right? And up till 2008, nobody did. The problem is there was a lot of other things that got involved in these things. And unfortunately, because there was no secondary pricing mechanism, it kind of blindsided a lot of people. That's what the whole movie The Big Short is about. People figured this out very quietly, and because it was so quiet, they had trouble proving it to other people. They were like, it was because it wasn't, like if you have a stock, like I was laughing the other day, I think you just put a video on, it was kind of funny. When you're down like 50%, but you have it, the market goes up 3% that day, you're like dancing and everything,
Yeah.
you're happy. And what's really funny is I'm looking at some stuff, and if you go to the beginning, back to the beginning of last year, 2025, there's a lot of stuff that's up, even with it down 50% from the highs where it was. It's still up like 400 and 500% from the beginning of last year. Just a lot of stuff is still up really high. Now, one of the things that's going on right now is because of all this uncertainty, the markets, I think, way overreacting to a lot of stuff. Whereas oil may be underreacting, which is interesting. And what's really making it, what's interesting is earnings are in a lot of companies are going up and up and up. I mean, the ones that are struggling, we kind of knew, like you're having some retail. Retail is tough. Certain times of the year, it's tough. There's certain things that are coming out, but these are kind of well known. Like this was broadcast already for a long time. Or people are worried that AI is going to somehow, is a threat to your job and your business. And I would say you have to embrace AI. AI is like, now this is a pen, but AI is like a pen. Okay. You can write all kinds of things with that pen. You could write We the People, right? You could write the Declaration of Independence. You could also write Mein Kampf, which is like a Nazi book or something, right? But it's the same pen. The pen's not good or bad. It's what you do with it. And AI is a tool, just like a pen. And you have to, it's all what
Mm-hmm.
we all have to learn how to use it. And I think it's going to be a real boom for productivity. And yeah, certain jobs are going to disappear, but other jobs are going to be created. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're a creator like yourself, or like to some degree, I consider myself a creator now. If you're a creator, AI is like a home run. I mean, it allows you to work at a much higher level because you got, you have this like personal secretary basically that you don't have to pay, and they don't take breaks, and they don't argue with their boyfriend on the phone all day long. Trust
Now,
me, years on Wall Street, I can tell you a lot of stories about all the assistants.
oh yeah. So I remember looking at collateralized debt obligations, CDOs was
Right, right,
like I was watching, I read the book, The Greatest Trade Ever, with
right,
John Paulson and Paulson the company.
right, right,
And
right.
he the CDOs was fine until the people on the other end started to default because Wall Street, because the banks was handing out mortgages. And
Yeah,
then they was, you know, putting these in the package and selling them to Wall Street. Wall Street was putting them in people's pension funds because it was considered, hey, I'm going to earn 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% guaranteed as long as the person paid a mortgage. They didn't pay attention to the person in the end with the mortgage, was somebody who's working part time at McDonald's with a $500,000 mortgage, right?
Right. What you got to look at is it was the initial product was a bunch of mortgages, was many mortgages being put together in a bigger piece, like a debt instrument. And what originally for years in the United States, in order to get a mortgage, you had to put 20% down, and you had to prove you made four, right? There we go.
Yep.
4 times what that payment was. You had to prove it. And you could have the greatest credit in the world. If you didn't have that 20%, it was see you later. And up till about the time Bill Clinton was president, and I'm not trying to blame Bill Clinton, but what happened was Wall Street loved these things because they were making money 2 ways. They were making money with investment banking, putting them together, and then sales. They were running around selling them to all those pension funds and banks and insurance companies and stuff like that, and hedge funds and whatever. Eventually, Bill, actually, it started with the Heritage Foundation. They're kind of were a little controversial, which wrote some stuff when Trump got elected as well. They wrote a white paper just before the Clinton became president that said that all the social programs we do, welfare, food stamps, things like that, in the long run, don't push people into the middle class. They keep people alive, but you don't start moving up the economic ladder. And if you're getting all these programs, in 10 years, you're going to be in the same place. You're going to be getting those programs, but you're not going to. But if you buy a house, your children are going to be middle class just by default, by inheriting that money.
And just the house alone.
Yeah,
the house growing in equity.
They're going to be, and you know what? And not only that, you could be the worst parent in the world. You could be mean. You could be a drunk. You could be everything. You just got to buy that house and leave it to your kids. And Clinton, when he read this stuff, now the Heritage Foundation is more thought of more like Republican and conservative, but Clinton loved this. He wanted to be the homeowner president. And he pushed the idea because, hey, more people with money, more tax revenue. There's a win-win, as they say. So he pushed the idea. But the problem is, like everything else, is that when you get the government involved, what always happens? Right away, they'll point over there and they go, you see that guy over there? He's been in jail for 20 years. He just got out of jail, and he's a bad guy. But he is never going to have the 20% it takes to put down to buy a house. And you know what? He has 2 kids, and he might be a bad guy, but you just told me no matter how bad he is, if he buys a house, his kids are going to be middle class. And because he's never going to have that 20%, you're depriving his kids of being middle class. And they may be nice kids. Maybe they study hard. Maybe they're trying to get ahead. So they're being penalized because of that. So that from the top down, there was this big push to like lower those, to create a bigger mortgage pool. In other words, lower standards. Eventually, they call it subprime lending. From the bottom up, from the Wall Street side, they weren't innocent either. Usually there's an economic value when people come up with ideas, and that economic value over time often gives way to what I call the blindness of commissions. And over time, things go from we're doing this because we're trying to accomplish that to we're doing this because that's a huge commission and we can't say no. And on the Wall Street side, the commissions just became irresistible. I call it like if you see those old movies and they go up the stairs and there's light at the end of the tunnel, like that kind of blinding light, like you're going to heaven and there's like light at the top. That's the commissions get so it becomes you're making so much money you just can't say no. You get like buried in it. And so from the bottom, there was a push to do all kinds of stuff to increase lending, more loans, more CDOs, more investment banking income, more sales, more everything. It's just more. And and those two things got together, and it just ran away because it wasn't. By the time it all blew up, the CDOs that you were seeing were really garbage. I mean, they were house of cards. There was no substance. That's what they started. That's what the Big Short, that movie, is all about. People started to figure that out. So wait a minute, there's nothing here. There's no value under here. This is just hot air. And then they started. And when it undid, because people like Lehman were building these things, putting them out and selling them as fast as possible, and they borrow tons of money to do this. And then when they sold them, they'd pay off the bill. Well, all of a sudden, that whole cycle of transactions stopped, and they got caught holding the bag of a bunch of assets that had no value. That was it. Bear Stearns, and I still remember, I don't want to rag on Jim Cramer, but I remember he was probably jumping on a desk going, Bear Stearns will never go out of business. And the next day the stock went to zero. And it didn't go down to 2, it went to 0. So it was like, it really caught everybody by surprise. I know people, I've heard people say, oh, well, we sort of saw this. Very few people saw it, and especially the climactic size that it hit everybody with. No one. Yeah. That catastrophe was.
I was surprised how big it became.
Oh, it wiped out everything, and then there was a lot of issues about how. There's still a lot of issues. I think there's still a lot of issues about how it was, quote unquote, resolved, which I don't think it was really resolved that well.
Now, fast forward to today.
Yes.
How do you see that happening in private credit today? How do you relate to it?
Right, you have a lot of the same problem. You have untraded assets that are not market traded at all. So there's no way to check there. The market is not registering a value. It's not passing judgment on those assets
because it's in a private market.
Yes, and then you have these untraded, quote unquote, debt instruments lumped into exchange traded funds, which are now they're limiting redemptions. A lot of them are limiting redemptions on a lot of these things because they're dying on the vine. Some of this stuff.
You was around and doing this stuff in 2008. What did you see? What could you look back at and say, I saw that. Oh, I should have paid attention to that.
Whoa. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be totally honest. I totally missed the ball on that whole thing. As you probably know, I've said before, well, I don't disparage real estate as an investment. It's a good investment. For myself, I'm just not a real estate guy. It's not my thing. So anything that has to do with real estate, I just don't pay that much attention to. I watch I like to see if there's a lot of house sales. I watch that stuff.
Building. Now, what do you see like, do you believe that? I don't know if you read this book called A Black Swan. Where they just like
that was like that was like after that book came out, every 5 minutes people were like, it's a black swan event.
The Black Swan.
Everything's a black swan event. I'm like, no, that doesn't happen that often. That could have been. It was, and then what made I think what really hurt the housing is you had that big catastrophe, which never was really properly resolved in my mind. And then after that, you had COVID, and they shut down the whole country for a couple of years, which exacerbated all the issues in the housing market. And I think to some degree right now, we're dealing with that problem. A lot of states like New Jersey the government is trying to intervene in the housing market and do more. But if you look at the real estate prices in New Jersey, they're more expensive than anywhere. So that clearly is not working. I mean, they've been trying to do it even way before 2008, and it hasn't worked for probably 50 years, and it's not working at all.
Had you known 2008 was coming, what would you have done different?
Oh God, I would have retired earlier. I would. You know what? Sometimes I would have bought a boat sooner and sailed away. I would have it was. I want to be totally honest. I totally missed that whole thing.
But I think most people
what I did see a little bit is I remember, and when you're a financial advisor or a stockbroker or you manage people's money, you always have those kind of odd clients. Like I had a big client, and there was a friend of theirs who had almost no money. And so the guy asked me, goes, hey, can't you take care of them for me? And he was a big guy, and he was a nice guy. And they weren't too much of a problem. So I said, yeah, no problem. But they could barely scrape together $2,000 a year to put in their account. Like they had kids, they weren't making that much money. It was like private schools. There was a lot going on. So I remember at the very beginning of 2008, the lady called me up out of the blue, and she said, we're not going to put any money in our retirement, in our IRA this year. And I said, why not? She goes, because we're buying real estate. And that was like somebody, like the flag went off in Indianapolis 500. It was like, I was like, whoa, that is, something's really wrong. Because if they're buying real estate, we got big problems. There's big problems out there. I didn't grasp the whole, how totally destroyed the mortgage market was, how they had made such a mess out of it. And how there was all this.
And I think it's no way that, unless you're like very close to the industry, there's no way that you could kind of see that coming.
Yeah, that one. There's other stuff I can tell you. There's other stuff I had inklings. There's other stuff I kind of navigated better. But that thing, I just didn't see it coming, and it took me a while to even figure it out. Like I'm still puzzling on how it just got so out of control for so long and nobody noticed. Because I mean, even the people who noticed early, it was like 2006. I mean, they were making CDOs since like the late 70s. So that's a big run. Now, bubbles get created over long periods of time. They don't happen in 2 seconds. And I don't know if I'd call that a black swan event. I just think that was a culmination of a lot of bad decisions. It just, and it added up after a while.
Hold on 1 second, Jay. Let me give about a shout out here. Vlad, what's going on over there on Facebook? Max B, my guy, he's at the Champs are here. Let's go. Here on YouTube and right here. That's my guy, Big Al. Everybody else that want to come in and join the conversation, definitely. So now, because I was around, but I was like 22 years old back then, didn't know what was going on. I watched 2008, and I had to read and study and watch the charts. But that's why I like talking to people like you who were there, who saw it, who, he said, I'm good, family. You two are killing it. Shout out to, I think he's out in Virginia. I think that in Virginia.
Thank you.
So what's going on, Vlad? Now, the thing is, if y'all got questions you want to jump in, ask Uncle James a question, definitely let him know. But in 2008, when I went back and looked at it, I'm like, how could somebody piece this puzzle together and know, like, hey, we're giving loans? I did notice a lot of people, usually people bought houses in their 40s, 50s, when there was more, but I started noticing people buying houses in their early 20s, early mid 20s. They was getting houses and they didn't have great jobs. So I was kind of like, okay, maybe times would just change until everything fell out, and I had to go back and research everything. So when I look at these quote unquote black swans, you're right. My phone rings every day with something about the world about to end. Oh, Prince, have you seen this? Yeah. This is the start of it. Do you know how big this is? The world's about to end. 2 days later, oh, you better do this. This is about to end. Oh, we're about to be over this. Oh, we got this going on. Oh, we got this going on. Don't even tell me about since President Trump came in office. Every day, I mean, I don't even know what's happening. I don't even think he probably knows what's going to happen. But
oh no, he's a real New Yorker. He definitely knows what's happening. This is part of his strategy.
Just confusion. Keep everybody confused and go left.
Well, if you know what he's doing, there's no confusion. But
what is he? Who knows what he's doing?
Well, it's real simple. He took over. He knocked out a narco terrorist state in Venezuela, which supplied lots of oil to
Okay.
China, which is really the issue, and a lot of drugs into the United States. So he took that out.
I'll give him
Now
that.
he's taken out Iran, which is another which is a terrorist state that supplies China with tons of oil.
Okay.
And what's
wait now, he's getting ready to go live here in 30, 40, 50
yeah,
minutes.
he
or
might be
whatever.
telling you that they're trying to have a truce. That's what the rumors been flying all over the place for days, that they're looking for an out here, and he said no a couple of times. So he's
So
like,
you think
no,
it's going to be like
you let
good news, ceasefire?
yeah, because he's not going to stand for any of the former government to be allowed to be there. That's it. That's not going to happen. And
Wow.
so now, what's going on? What's really going on? A lot of people
How do
think.
you think the market is going to react to that?
Oh, I think we're going to have a parabolic rise to the upside. That's why I've not told people. I said you got to hang on, because if you bail and this thing turns, you are going to be crying about it for the next 20 years. Because this horse is going to jump not only out of the barn, it's going to jump the fence, and you're never going to catch it again. It's going to go crazy.
And I tell people, like, people are like, what about what let's say that today, since you got there, Mr. Buy high, buy low, sell high. Right now, are we low? Are we high? Are we?
This is where the uncertainty plays the role, right? So I would say we're a lot lower. We're not low, but we're definitely a lot lower than we were. And if you pick a quality stock with growing earnings, like a lot of these tech stocks or a lot of these space stocks, I mean, you got to look at the bigger picture. I mean, we have AI. We're going to the moon. We might go to Mars. In my lifetime, we might be living on Mars. We're definitely going to be living on the moon. We got all kinds of things going on. But let me just circle back to Iran, because I think a lot of people are very confused about what's going on and what the objectives are. First of all, we don't need oil from Iran. It's got nothing. The Europeans need oil from Iran. The Chinese need oil from Iran. We don't need any oil whatsoever from Iran. We couldn't care.
Why are gas prices so high, James? Why are gas prices?
Because gas is a global market, and frankly, they're not that much higher than when Biden was president. And gas prices are primarily high because there's so much tax on them, which is what makes me crazy, is that people complain when there's oil is a global market.
Wait, hold on, before we get into the oil,
right?
Going back to 2008 and looking at private credit today,
right?
What is giving you the resemblance of 2008 and 2026?
Oh, it's the same.
I know we talk about everybody's in the Iran oil.
Yeah.
We're looking at something that's
just to go back, the biggest thing that you have that is very similar is there is no market forces affecting the pricing. There's no market pricing involved in private credit, like the deals. How are they priced? What are they really worth? What's really in them? It's all like very mysterious.
So if you make a private, for everybody else who's listening and who's going to catch the playback,
right?
He's talking about the secondary market. Public markets. Everybody knows what Google, Amazon is. You buy a stock, you sell a stock, you do all this stuff or whatever, right? Now the problem you're saying and that we're looking at is to say, hey, look, like for prime example, I just made my first private placements, right?
Right.
You go out and we say, hey, you know what? I want to invest into this project, and I pay $1,000 to get inside the project.
Yep.
I don't know what that project is worth, right? Until another round comes, somebody comes and buy it from me. Right. So you're saying, hey, people have this debt out.
It's right. It's hard to measure what your valuation is.
But how can you even pay attention to that market? Even know?
Well, you got to first of all, you got to know what you're getting yourself into. Like there's like to me, the trick is, if you want to do this successfully, you have to have a specific project and know exactly what that project specifically is. Okay, so if you're going to build an apartment complex in your hometown, in your former hometown in Georgia, it's got to fit that neighborhood. It's got to be right for the area. It's got to be big enough to make money, not too big. And you got to understand that before you get involved in a private transaction for that. the problem I see is these things just start getting really big. People start seeing easy money because for a while interest rates were low, valuations of real estate were low. You were after COVID, after the 2008, you had a lot of downside. There was and even after COVID or after 2008, you had a big long slip where they weren't building for a while. So
now that you made the sense of what private equity is, someone who listened to this said, "Okay, so what to private equity? Okay, we lended out some money. How does this impact me? How does this impact the market?"
Well, it impacts you because this is big stuff. So, for example, you might be working out of an office building that is basically underwater in its mortgage. And what happens if they default? What happens to the tenants? What happens to your rent? What happens? There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong.
But why would you default?
Just like you had mentioned, oil. Why is oil higher? Borrowing money is also global. So if suddenly the perceived risk starts to increase dramatically, interest rates will start to go up dramatically. Or your ability to refinance anything may be severely limited because people are worried that because of AI or because of overbuilding or because of people work from home, as a real estate person, you won't make enough rent rolls won't be high enough to pay the money back.
Now, how do we get to this point? Like, why people defaulting? Like, well, what's the reason? Because these are institutions.
Right. Well, it's just the same thing in your personal life. Sometimes you get laid off. Sometimes sometimes you get sick, and I'm
not seeing a parallel to, like, let's say Tesla, these companies that do these leverage buyouts.
Right.
They go to private equity because people think, oh, Tesla bought Twitter. Usually Tesla would go to a private equity firm and borrow money, private credit, private debt, and have a leverage buyout of Twitter. Right. My thing is, what is happening to people like Tesla on the other end that they are now can't pay back the private equity firms?
Right. Well, I think somebody like Tesla, like Musk is, first of all, Musk is a genius, and I mean, he's like a super genius, and I think that people are betting that he's going to figure out always some way to pay everything back. I think over time, he'll work out almost anything. I have total confidence. And Twitter was kind of a weird investment because it was one of these social media things that had outsized impact for the amount of people who actually used it. It's kind of like, I hate to say it, like the New York Times. If you look at their circulation, it's really not that big, but it has outsized impact. If it's in the New York Times, people think it must be important. It influences what people think like crazy, even though it's really not that big of a circulation. And to some degree, I think some of the kind of like CNN and MSNBC have outsized influence, which they shouldn't, because they have virtually no viewership. The viewership is tiny. I mean, CNN, the owners of CNN are talking about shutting the whole thing down. It's like it's not working. But sometimes there's other issues. So I just think that you have to look at the project. You have to understand the project. You have to know, for example, if you're like even pay scale, if executives get paid $150,000 a year in this industry, and you're investing in something that's paying executives $500,000 a year, that's a red flag right there. If you have real estate that's pricing at maybe twice the rent rolls, I don't know how real estate prices. This is hypothetical. And you invest in something that's pricing at 50 times the rent rolls, there's something wrong. You're like, that's not
making sense.
Yeah, and that's what that's the analysis that goes in. I'm not saying these deals are all bad. I think a lot of them are, if I was a big company and I wanted less eyes and you were a big company and we had done business together,
Uh-huh.
I would think that we might be able to craft a really good deal that works for both of us to borrow money. Like I could borrow money from you, you would fund it. And you would get we'd add like an equity kicker. We'd give you some ownership, a nice interest rate, a few other things. And you may say, you know what, that's just what I'm looking for right now. I got some cash. I want to put it to work. And that's good. The problem starts to get is when you have these kind of big, empty, blind pools and they're just buying everything in sight. And they have some success, and then they think everything automatically is going to duplicate that exact success. And that just doesn't work that way. There's only, there's like what's like I can tell you with stocks. There's like stocks like Qualcomm and Palantir and Nvidia only come around every once in a while. You're not gonna if you're gonna be looking for those forever, you're never gonna buy another stock because you're never gonna. It's almost impossible. It's only gonna find those by luck. It's not, no matter how smart you are. I don't care what it says. When you hit the bullseye, it's like that's
you got that needle in the haystack.
Yes, exactly.
People look at it that way. So as we look into something like private equity, what is happening that's waving a red flag to you to say I'm seeing some issues?
I think what's happening, they borrowed money on certain valuations, and now the valuations have come way down.
But why? I mean,
well, for example, the market, if you go to a place like Seattle, I think Seattle office space is only 30% occupied or something like that. It's really low. Even in like Philly is not that high. It's climbed up a bit, but New York kind of went back to halfway. It seemed to recover relatively quickly. But I mean, not perfectly, but once it got going, mind you, I think it got help because a lot of big firms like JP Morgan said, look, if you don't come back to work, you need to find a new job. So that kind of,
I saw that.
Yeah. So Jamie Dimon, a lot of big firms in New York just said, look, you got to come in. That's all there is to it. I'm not sure if I necessarily agree. I know Musk thinks people should go to the office, but I'm not so sure. I think I'm very suspicious of corporate culture in general. I just think it's a lot of time wasting.
Are you looking at as commercial real estate, the private equity backed by commercial real estate may be an issue?
Oh, definitely. You got buildings now if they're 30%. Like for example, one of the tour companies that I work for used to be in 222 Fulton Street. And I think at the peak, there was you could go in there any day and there'd be about 15,000 people in that building.
Yeah.
After COVID, there was like 400 and 500. That was it. The building, it went down so much, the building turned into, it's going to be housing. It's going to be condos.
I see the same thing happened with event centers. They were just like, we got hit in the COVID and they never rebounded.
Yeah, didn't rebound. Why? Because people
like this.
Right, because first of all, I think a lot of people misjudge how awful commuting to work is. It's horrible. And I consider myself a professional commuter, and I have commuted like great distances. Mm-hmm. You'd be shocked how far I've gone just to go to work or do something, but on a regular basis, no less. But it's awful. It's a terrible experience. It's not good in any way. And the people who promote it are usually people who don't commute or are driven around in limousines or fly private planes.
Or they're so used to it. They've been doing it for.
Well, I think I'm really used to it, and it excuse my English, it sucks. There's nothing good to say about it. There's no, and even if you're really efficient with your time, like you read on the bus or the train,
that's your cat.
Yeah, the cat like fell over. You know what it is? I got these extra lights out. I think he's trying to.
He's trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, that's it. He's screaming.
Now ask yourself the question of, if you know this, do you think this is going to be something that's going to pull the bottom out of the market?
I think it's weighing. I think it's very quietly weighing on the market. I think it's even weighing on the market more than I think they're saying Iran. I think that, and the media is making it about Iran, which means it's about something else. And I think it's a much bigger issue than people are. I don't even have a bare grasp at it. But when you have huge companies like BlackRock and Apollo and those giant fund managers saying, well, you can't really redeem all your money back right away. We're going to limit redemptions and stuff like that. That's the beginning of, that in the old days, there used to be bank runs. That's the beginning of, does that now, I could be over just maybe they're being extra cautious.
But why out of all the things that we see make headlines every 5 minutes these days, why private credit?
It's because it's where the big money, the really big money.
Institution, a lot of institutions.
Yes, it's all institution and big people. It's not people like you and I. It's really big money. And big money is, you got to remember, if you have
break that down, James, when you're telling them, break down what is institutional money, or because not retail, you and I money.
You're talking trillions of dollars. I'm not, nowadays it's in the trillions. You probably have $3 trillion.
Where's these trillions of dollars coming from? Can you explain?
It comes from, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the old money, big guys like Musk, guys like Warren Buffett. Big money. I probably Warren Buffett wouldn't. He's too smart. But this would be I could see Buffett doing this because it's for a specific project that he's very smart. He's a very despite the folksy kind of way he tries to portray himself, he is a very shrewd, very smart investor, and I could see him maybe using some kind of private equity or private credit to finance something that he's trying to do. He doesn't really need money. He has tons of capital. So this would be
part of S&P 500. You got money coming in every month.
Right. He's probably he could apply. What do you do with all this money? And you got to remember, big money, the issue is on losing it, not on making lots of money. When you have small amounts of money, you're like, whoa, I'm up 50%. Woo. But when you have huge amounts of money, if you're even down 5 or 10%, it's a huge amount of money. Right? If you take $1 billion.
I learned that,
right.
If you're like a 30% drop, it's like, when you deal with millions of dollars, it's like, whoa.
Right. Then all of a sudden you get to a point where you may not be able to make that back because it's such a huge amount of money. So usually big money is about protecting the principal. They're protecting capital. And whereas smaller money wants to grow, you need to grow. You have no choice. You have to grow. And you're looking, that's why you could, a guy like me, when I was managing money, we could have like $800,000 or $900,000, and we would outperform every hedge fund like enormously because we were only managing a small amount of money. It was different. When you have $1 billion out there, first of all, you're limited by what stocks you can buy. There's only a certain amount of stocks, right? Then you're limited how fast you can move the money, and you're under pressure because if it goes down 20%, people are ready to hang you from a tree and beat you like a piñata. It's bad.
Trust me, I have experience.
I'm telling you, look, if you're going to be in this business, you got to get used to getting yelled at every once in a while. It happens. It's part of the game.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it. The thing about it is everybody wants the return. Everybody wants the destination. Right. People don't want the journey.
Right. Oh, definitely not.
They look at last year. Oh, I could have earned 20%, 25%. I want 25%, but they don't pay attention. Last year, we were down 50 before
we rallied from a big low.
That's the part. That journey part. Yes. They want to get to the end and say, "Hey, 20%. You've averaged 12% a year. I want 12%, but you don't know the volatility of that 12.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's fine with it. Like Mike Tyson said, everybody's fine with it. Everybody got a plan till they get punched in the face. People are like, oh, no. I just want the upside of the 20. Yeah. I don't want all that stuff that, I don't like one of my old bosses used to say, I just want the baby. I don't want the labor and the birth pains.
Right, right.
Anyway,
Well,
yeah.
I used well, like well, you see it with if you're dealing with people. The other issue that happens with a lot of inexperienced investors is if they give you $100, you turn it into $200. If it goes down to $190, they've suddenly lost money, even though they're still up $90 from what they started with,
Yeah.
right? It's like so you get a lot of his perception and fear. But like I said, when you have really big money, they are trying to defend.
Here's another one. Tell me, does this make sense? Like I've seen this myself. Realized gains versus unrealized gains, right? So the market goes down. You got all these unrealized losses, right?
Right,
But
right,
in the in between time, you might be trading and realize some gains
right.
during the turmoil, but
Mhm.
that's something that the average investor who's not really deep into a portfolio won't see because they log in and look at the number and whatever that number say, that's how you get graded, right?
Yeah,
They don't care if you was back here, had all these realized gains. They're looking like, well, I'm down, I lost this much. And they could be down on something, but
right.
doesn't mean they're out of something. Can you explain kind of like unrealized versus realized gains and the difference?
Right. Well, what you gotta with like smaller investors, particularly, what you got to do is encourage them the idea of like think of it like shopping. So if you like a Ralph Lauren shirt and you go into Ralph Lauren right now, it costs what, $170.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? At the end of the season, it's going to be on sale for $39.
It's true, yeah.
But it's still the same shirt. It's not any different. It might, and a lot of, especially Ralph Lauren, they're kind of classic. They're
Yeah.
a white Ralph Lauren shirt, like button down shirt. You can wear it for the next 10 years. It looks the same. At least for guys, it's real easy, right?
Uh-huh.
So why not? That's what you gotta like. If it is down and it's a quality stock like Apple or Microsoft, unless there's some weird thing going on with those companies, I would say you have those, you still have that same stock. So it's eventually it's gonna come roaring back. And I think we're probably, I mean, if there's some big news like coming out tonight or in the next couple of days, I think this thing is just gonna go
And
straight.
people don't think the market is roaring, but it's really just going back to where it was.
Right, but I think it might even be higher because the future without a predatory Iran in the future. First of all, what has this shown us? Like, this is what a lot of people are not looking at. Okay, let's just talk about Iran again. Okay, you have Israel, the United States, and all the Gulf Arab states, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Kuwait, UAE, all these countries, Bahrain, they're all fighting together against Iran with Israel and the United States. So that in itself is mind-boggling. It's like, it's huge. Okay. Now, what else do you have? If Iran becomes a stable, no longer predatory nation and no longer is the largest exporter of terrorism in the world, what does that do? It makes the Middle East more stable. And the Middle East.
How does our this is just going to happen now, even though this regime has been in place since before I was born. I was born in '84.
Yeah,
I've been
47 years
in the '70s. So
yeah, 79.
What's going to make this different?
Oh well, this first of all, Trump followed through. So that's in the past they haven't really followed through. Nobody thought it could happen. You have probably, I would say, some upward of 80% of the population of the country hates the government, not dislikes them, hates the government, feels that they are imprisoned by this government. There's even a very strong argument to say that Iran fundamentally is not a Muslim country. Like there's as many other religions there as Islam. And I'm not trying to bash Islam. I'm just saying that the country has been taken over by total crazies, and all they use the oil money to export terrorism, not just in the Middle East, everywhere, South America, Asia, all over. All the fighting in between Israel and in Lebanon is what? Hezbollah is an Iranian-funded terrorist group. Hamas is an Iranian-funded terrorist group. The Houthis in Yemen are an Iranian-funded terrorist group, and there's many, many more. There's many, many, many more. Now, if you cut that all off and that ends, now it's not going to end. This is, to me, one of the biggest. The other part of the double uncertainty is that you could end the war, but now everything's got to settle. And so you're still going to have these outliers around. They're not going to run out of money instantaneously. You have the transition of power in Iran, but in Iran they have a former monarchy that one of the nephew, I guess he's Prince Reza. He's very popular with the sort of the anti-Islamist. The people who are riding on the street trying to kick the government out. Very, very, and it's very underplayed by the American media. He's super popular and he seems very legit to establishing a temporary government just to reorganize things and put Iran on the like some kind of secular republic.
Is that the one who's talking? Because Trump is always like, "Hey, I just got off the phone with Iran. I'm talking to her." I'm like, "Who's he talking to?"
Well, this guy has been in exile for a long time. There's what it is.
Oh, I think I know you're talking about. He was like, was he like the old president?
Reza, he's like the Shah's nephew, and he's very well spoken. And I don't know. I've seen him on TV. Now you don't know because
how do we know he got the power? How do we know he's
well? This is the thing. Like from dealing with people get power and they go crazy in a real hurry. They seem normal and suddenly they have the power and suddenly old everything's off. It's like they go crazy. So that's always another issue. But I think his main focus is he wants to restore his family name.
I've seen him. I watched him speak, but the last I saw was they had elected the Supreme Leader's son. So who gives him?
Well, that's the crazies. That's the crazies. The people who run Iran are not. Every day they get up and they say they want to kill you, like and I would say generally when people say they want to kill you, you should believe them. And they have done everything they can, including try to assassinate President Trump. They have done everything they can. And it's funny because way before he was president, maybe 20 years ago, I probably a little after you were born, he was talking then about how Iran was a threat needed to be dealt with. And he wasn't. He was just building Trump Tower in those days and stuff like that. That was, but I think it's unfortunately I think because the media has so distorted things. I think it's very hard for younger people to understand how much a threat Iran really is. They are really trying to kill you. Their goal is to destroy all of Western civilization. There is no joke at all about it. They are going to kill everybody if they had their way, and they definitely would. And these are, like we talked about this on the phone one time. These are people who put bombs on their own kids.
Yeah.
And I remind a lot of people, if you're willing to put a bomb on your own kid, that kind of crazy is like beyond the crazy. Like that is.
My thing is, what took this to the front of our agenda? Like
because Trump knows. You know what's going on? Trump is trying to pin China's ears back with oil. They need oil, and he's taken out all the people who are funding or giving them oil, basically. And so he's taken that out. Trump is reordering the total. I don't think there's going to be NATO anymore. At least we may not be a member.
Yeah,
the UN may disappear very quickly. Also, I think it's on the way out. So that's another issue.
Why is that? Why?
Because Trump has gone back to the pre-World War II rules, which are the U.S. controls the Western Hemisphere, and everybody stays out. It is our job, our duty, and our function as the superpower of the Western Hemisphere to run it or to control. This is our spot. Russia has to deal with Russia and its clients. And Russia is a big place. China has its own issues, probably internally more than a lot of people think. And in Asia, there is probably going to be growing, and I'm seeing it coming already, is Japan is becoming a major rival for everybody. Again, they're coming back. And in Asia, that is a scary thing, way more scary than we can comprehend. And I would say that knowing the Japanese, I wouldn't be surprised if something happened with Taiwan. They jumped in, and suddenly we find out they have a gazillion, they have some clone army that they built underground somewhere. And suddenly they have all these robots running out to fight in there. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. They stalled with sending ships to the Straits of Hormuz because they wanted to talk to President Trump about how much of their own navy they wanted to show the world. Because they're not supposed to have a navy, and yet they have, by most estimates, the second largest one in the world. So they wanted to make sure it is okay that they're not violating agreements that were made during World War II, but they wanted to assure the president, and I believe that the new prime minister of Japan gets along with Trump very well. I don't think
that was hilarious.
I think they were part. They were whooping it up. I think they're kind of like each other and I think that they just wanted to be sure that they were going to be okay if suddenly people saw all these Japanese aircraft carriers and said, "Hey, wait a minute. They're not supposed to have aircraft carriers. Why do they have air?" I know they're defense forces. They have like another name. They don't call it a navy. They have another name for it, but it is what it is. And it's, I just think that there was other, that's another thing. So there's going to be Asia. There's going to be sort of in the middle, maybe Europe and Russia. And then there's going to be the US and the West. And this is the pre-World War I divide the way it was. And this is what we're going back to. We don't need the oil from Iran. We don't need the Straits of Hormuz. Europe does. And the problem with all this stuff,
we got some allies though. How are we going to get to Bahrain and Qatar?
Well, they all jumped in because they know that Iran is a bigger threat to them than anybody because they're right in the neighborhood. And Iran was, of course, made it easy because they were shooting missiles into their backyards. They were shooting missiles in Dubai. They were shooting missiles in the UAE. They were shooting missiles at Kuwait. They were doing a lot of stuff. And
how do you feel with the whole thing with Israel? Do you think Israel drug us into the war? Or?
No, I don't. I think people who say that are just, these are more this is, first of all, this is terrorist propaganda. This is more anti-Semitic. I think Israel has their own agenda here. I think their agenda is actually a little different than Trump's. And I think Trump reined them in a little bit because his biggest problem right now is, in order to really end the crazies running Iran, you have to cut off the oil money. But if you destroy the oil infrastructure, the new government that takes over afterwards is going to be really kneecapped. So he doesn't want Prince Razi to be coming into a total mess. They gotta have something to work with, and and if they do, then that transition will work out a lot better. You know how it is. If there's jobs and work to do, it gets people going. If there's nothing going on and there's no positive changes, people get restless really quickly. They get very unhappy.
Okay. Well, I know we got an hour over here, so I know you got to get running. I got to get running too.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to leave people out there before you get out of here?
Well, I just want to say it's great to be on. I love your audience is awesome. And I do run tours in New York City still. So if you want, you can find me. I have a Facebook page called Unofficial Wall Street, and it's unofficial : Wall space Street. So that's because if you put Wall Street together, I think you get like a barber shop that's downtown or something like that.
Oh, wow.
It's very funny, right? It's very funny. So I just want to say that I'm available. And particularly if you have some customized tour that you want to talk about finance, but you have something very specific you want to do, reach out and just like private credit, we can put it together.
We can put it together.
And I also want to leave people that, well, there's a lot of uncertainty. I would be very positive about what's going on in the world. There is.
Wait. Now you just came on here telling me about private equity. I should be worried. Right. This is happening. Hey, blah, blah, blah.
Well,
don't worry about it.
Right. You don't want to be blindly, with rose-colored sunglasses on to be optimistic, but there's a lot of really cool stuff going on. You embrace AI, embrace the changes, move forward. I'm not saying you got to like the president or dislike the president. Don't waste your time disliking people. It's not going to get you anywhere in life. You could, the perfect example, you could go to the gym every day for a year, and at the end of the year, you'll feel a lot better. You can hate President Trump every day for a year, and at the end of the year, you're going to be in the exact same place you are when you started. It's not going to do one good thing for you. And this is not to say you should like him or not like him. It's just to say, don't waste your time. Don't waste your energy on stuff like that. Focus on building your skills, running your own life, enjoying your family, doing important stuff.
Okay. Well, y'all here first, Uncle James here. I know we could go on for a whole another hour, but here we're ringing the bell on private equity.
Yes.
Iran president's getting ready to speak here shortly. I'll be tuned into that to see what what he's going to say there. I think we kind of know what he's going to say. Hopefully, I'm hoping just say, hey, ceasefire. We're out of Iran. We're going home. Sorry about that. We got to go build this stuff back up. It is what it is. On to Cuba, probably what he's going to say.
Right. He's going to say Marco Rubio is becoming the president of Cuba.
Exactly, something like that. Yeah, he's in Cuba right now. We're live from Cuba.
Right. I want to see people say it. I know people go crazy, but I'm a New Yorker and I think it's hysterical. I love to watch all the chaos. I think
the only thing I do, I just watch markets. I just need a bull market, run a bull market, and get out my way. Whatever you do, just keep us going up. I know it just not gonna go forever, but that would be nice. But yeah, that's what it is. So,
very good.
Yeah. Well, always good to have you on, ladies and gentlemen. Until the next video, podcast, or whatever else crazy you see me doing around the globe, you already know. Don't forget that like, subscribe, comment, and share button, and we'll be back on. I know I'm a little bit more sporadic, but hey, it's a lot going on in the world, a lot going on in the firm. Actually, being in the business now. All before I used to talk about it, but being in the business now, it's a lot going on. But hit that like, subscribe, comment, and share button. Peace. Be safe. I'm out. Thank you. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell icon. Hit that like, comment, and share button.